All right, Sawadee Cobb. It's good to see you guys. Cecil Ramos here, going to do my presentation. And I want to start off with talking about the 4 people that I interviewed. The first one, his name is Ivan Grillimon, and he is from Spain, and he lives currently right now in northern Thailand, in Chiang Mai. And so when I asked him some of these questions, and asked him some of the ones about the examples, such as, what is your gut reaction to when you hear the word Bible? Have you ever personally read any of the Bible? Why or why not? What was your reaction to what you read? Ivan, who is an amazing guy, he has had a difficult life being in Spain, and he came to Thailand. He married a Thai woman, and they have a daughter who's like 10 years old. And he has a successful business back in Spain right now, and he is not a Christian as well. So I was excited to hear his answers. And so what he said was that yes, that he has read the Bible, that he also went to a school as well, a Christian school growing up. He thinks that the Bible is a wonderful book as well, and he also stated that as a kid he started reading the Bible without really understanding the meaning of the passages, but as a grown-up, he says he started to peel back more layers of the meaning and the knowledge. And so he said he does know people who read the Bible as well. He said for some people it's a source of revelation to what could be called the path of enlightenment, and for him it's a positive thing in terms of faith and hope. And then when I asked him about what the Bible being taught in schools, the impact it would have, his answer was that the Bible itself, this is very interesting, it's one of the fundamental pillars of Western society. He said it would be wise to keep teaching the Bible in schools as part of our common ground of our past and our present culture. And he says that it does have a positive impact in ethics and moral values, and a better understanding of the human nature and the meaning of life. So I thought that was very cool. The next guy that I want to talk about his name's Jay. I'll call him Jay the Barber. He is here in Thailand. He's a Thai Buddhist man, and he's been cutting my hair for many years. I really like this guy a lot. I've known him for 5 years, and he mentioned some of the same questions that I asked him. He mentioned when he was a child, he read the Bible in schools. They taught it like as one of their religious courses. He thinks it's a good book because it teaches good morals and how to be a good person, and it also teaches you to help others. He says that he thinks it would be a good idea to be taught in schools as one of the course subject as well, and it would be good for society. This next guy that I interviewed, his name is Phil Sharma. Really excited to tell you about him. I met him when I lived in Vancouver approximately 9 years ago. It was approximately 9 plus years ago. And he is an atheist as well. That comes out in some of his interview. He says his gut reaction when he hears the word Bible is that it's simply it's a religious book. And if someone starts in conversation, someone starts quoting it to him, he just says, "Oh no, here we go." He mentioned that as a youth, when he was younger, he read some of the Bible. He had an infatuation with the book of Revelation. As a matter of fact, he wanted to get a huge tattoo on his back about 4 horsemen, angels, trumpets, mountains crashing into the sea or into the ocean. And as far as his own personal beliefs, he says that after talking to pastors, he decided to become an atheist. The reason for becoming an atheist is because he was surrounded by so many religions, and to Phil, religion is responsible for death, war, and slavery. And so for him, faith in spirituality just really is not worth it. It just isn't worth it. And as it pertains to people who read the Bible. He says he knows people who read the Bible regularly, but he says that they're devoted. They are devoted to their religion, and so that's the reason. Yeah, that's the reason for him that other people read it. And about as it pertains to it being taught in schools, he says that if the Bible were to be taught in schools, it would alienate other families. He lives in BC, British Columbia. He's in Vancouver, and he says that Vancouver is very diverse. And for him, he says, for the sake of comfortability, religion should be left out. He said it should be something that should be practiced at home or in a place of worship. He says there are private religious schools like around his area. He doesn't mind that. He doesn't mind religious private schools being around his area. But he says that he does not agree with doctrine, or rather indoctrination of kids at a young age. He says he wants to present kids information when they're old enough to discern or make their own decisions or think critically for themselves. Phil and I actually met at a place called Stanley Park in Vancouver, and his son was about the same age as my son. My boys at the time were about, they were about 3 and 1 years old, and his boy Charlie was the same as my son, and so they were playing together, and so I thought I'll kind of chop it up and talk with him, and ended up having a really good conversation. And he ended up opening up and saying that Charlie's mom just recently died. Charlie was 3. I think Charlie's mom died like the year before or something. And we connected, and we hung out a few times, and he actually came to Thailand. Was able to connect with him, and hopefully we connect again. Anyhow, the fourth and last person that I want you to know, who I interviewed, her name is Jerry Longo. Her name is Jerry Longo, and she's an Italian woman. And I'm really glad that she did this interview with me, because I have not seen her for close to 8 years now. My wife and I met she and her husband when we first came to Thailand. We met her in Thailand, in northern Thailand, in Chiang Mai, and she and her husband were taking language courses with us. They were learning Thai with us, and so we just met, and we were in class together for like 3 weeks, and then after that we split ways, but we were always friends on social media. And so I was really excited about her answers. She's from Italy, and she actually is currently living in Italy. But she said, as it pertains to these topics, she is not a religious person. So hearing the word Bible, you wouldn't get much of a reaction from her. As an Italian, religion is a deeply rooted tradition for her. However, the Bible to her has been very much misinterpreted and even mystified. And then she says, although I do admit when she was younger, she read the Bible, and there were good teachings within the Bible. She also goes on to say that some reading of the Bible was useful and foundational to build up her personal moral identity. It's interesting what verbiage she used. However, some parts were enforced very strictly, and she thinks these teachings should have been a starting point for inner reflection and not simply orders that she needed to simply obey. And out of all the people that she knows who regularly read the Bible, only a few of them are actually following the ideas and the moral path within. She doesn't think it would be beneficial to be taught as a standalone subject unless it was taught alongside other books of philosophy and morality as it pertains to society. So now in a transition to an overview of some major ideas regarding the reading, interpreting, and living by the Bible as described in Reading in Black and my other chosen book, which I'll get to in a second. First, I just want to kind of dive into reading While Black by Esau Macaulay. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. Fascinating book, and something that really caught my attention on the onset in chapter 1, which is entitled "The South Got Something to Say," making space for Black ecclesial interpretation. And at the beginning of this, the music awards, he starts talking about the music awards and the East Coast versus West Coast. And at the end, you have on the West Coast, you have Tupac, you have Snoop Dogg, you have all these characters which I grew up with. And then on the East Coast, you have P. Diddy, Biggie, Notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls, right? Kind of going at it. Who's going to win? And at the end, the South won at that award, and Outkast won. And one of the quotes that they said was, "The South got something to say." The South got something to say. I really appreciated in this book how he kind of recalls a story when he was sick. The author, Esau, when he was sick, he went to the office to call his mom to come pick him up. They dialed the number on the emergency card and gave him the phone, and he answered, and he called, and a man answered and said, "I'm sorry, you have the wrong number. No one by that name lives here, works here, or lives here." And then he told the woman, I think the number was wrong. Can you call again? And so they call again. Same guy answered, and he's asked for his mom again. He says, "She doesn't work here." And then he says, "Don't you get it? The N-word, don't you get it? Or don't you, people get it?" And called him the N-word and hung up. And he just talked about the turmoil within, that he was aware who he was, but he wasn't aware of his blackness, that it was seen as a negative thing or derogatory thing, or how would someone know that he was in fact black just by his voice on the phone? And I really appreciate as well in this book how, especially in that beginning chapters, that it was introducing us to the rich history of African theologians and scholars that don't get enough credit for their contribution or even for their blackness. Maybe we might know many of these theologians or scholars, but we wouldn't attribute them as being black or as being African. And so I really appreciate how he highlighted those points and just brought it to our attention as well. And the fact that one of the major ideas that came out for me as well, that he says that the gospel came to Africa long before slaves were brought to the United States. And I'll repeat that again, because for me, even though I think I believe that, I must have forgotten it. And the gospel come to Africa long before slaves were brought to the States. I remember hearing even pastors who I knew, who I really have respected for a long time, just saying, yeah, it was a bad thing, like all the slavery, the treatment and all that, but at least so many people were able to hear the gospel. They had a bad life, but they came and they said they're able to get saved and go to heaven. Something good came out of it. But the fact of the matter is that the gospel has come to Africa long before slaves ever came to America. And he goes on to speak of the theology of policing, the New Testament, and the political witness of the church, and the Bible and the pursuit of justice, etc., and other themes as well. But what I also gathered as some major themes or big ideas, that in many ways the prophets of the Old Testament, spoke harshly against issues of injustice. They spoke to power. They spoke truth to power. Major themes of the Old Testament of the Bible are dedicated to issues of justice. So major of these books as well, such as I believe Isaiah, Nahum, Malachi, many of them, and they spoke justice and also rather injustice. And Jesus Christ himself stood for justice. He literally was born a crime. I thought that was really interesting when he made that statement, or that he was born under the rule when he shouldn't have been born, when he should have been executed. But of course, obviously they fled. And in many ways, he was able to identify with the pain and suffering of his black brothers and sisters as well. And Esau McCullough helps us to see different aspects of the Word of God that many of us were not taught, such as Romans 13, which has been used by many of my conservative brothers and sisters as a proof text to not stand for issues of justice, or that the Lord doesn't really bother with issues of justice. He also framed this chapter in a larger narrative of the Bible and of the life and the teachings of Jesus and his disciples. And so for me, he put it in context. I really appreciated just the depth in which he brings us to understand things that I was just never taught. The second book that I read was Womanist Midrash by Wilda C. Gaffney. Super long book, and I want to start off by reading a collection of quotes from this book, and then I'm going to share kind of what I gathered from reading this book. The first one I want to share is, she writes, Leviticus is the heart of the Torah. It is a center book in the collection, occasioned by a pause in the Exodus journey, begun in Exodus and concluded in Numbers. It is a text that strikes fear in the heart of many seminarians and experienced teachers and preachers. Yet it is simply, and not so simply, a text about how to live in relationship, and how to live in relationship to God and in relationship to others in the community. The second quote is, exercise of the sanctified imagination is also a form of what biblical scholars call reader response criticism. The third quote is, the sanctified imagination is a fertile creative space where the preacher interpreter enters the text, particularly in the space in the text, and fills out the missing details, names, backstories, detailed description of the scene and characters, and so on. And the next quote says, specifically, Womanist Midrash is a set of interpretive practices, including translations, exegesis, and biblical interpretation that attends to marginalized characters in biblical narratives, especially women and girls, intentionally including and centering on non-Israelite peoples and enslaved persons. The next quote is, womanist interpretation makes room at the table of discourse for the perspective of the least privileged among the community and the honored guest of any background. My last quote by her is, womanism is committed to the wholeness and flourishing of the entire community. There's so much that I could say, but I think I just want to say is a big themed idea is that I was not aware of the many voices that are hidden, that are silent, many voices of the women that are in their stories that are hidden, that are silence that are not highlighted, are not lifted up. They're there, they're in the text, but maybe it's a sentence here or a few sentences here, or the way that it talks about even sexual relations between patriarchs and their wives or their women, or kings and their wives or their women. And I didn't understand the subtlety of the language that made it seem that at times it's written out in such a way that the sexual encounter is mutual and consensual, and many times it's more of a rape and the trafficking and the sex trafficking of women, and their journey of faith and their courage and their strength and their stand against injustices. I just I was so unaware. I was so unaware of their power and of what they had to go through, and their, like I said, the courage and fortitude. This is one of those books that it is a long, thick book. I'm gonna have to go through it again and really mull on it and really just allow it to seep in. I'm really grateful for this book. It was very, very challenging, and very informative. So my last part is just to talk about the practical suggestions on reading, meditating, and personal and spiritual renewal. So I just want to say, for me, what has been helpful personally is reading the entire Bible in a year. And the way that I do that is by listening to the Bible by an app called the Daily Audio Bible app. It's free as a podcast, and you can just listen. It takes about 15 minutes per day. Or you get the app, and it has very different languages and different reading plans as well. But I listen to that 15 minutes a day, and it gives me sometimes a little prayer at the end, or a little sermonette. Has been very beneficial for me over the past several years. And the second one that I want to suggest that has been very helpful to me has been something that I just recently started called the Lectio 365. Danielle Strickland has mentioned that. Some others have mentioned that as well. That app has been really great for my wife and me in sense of meditation and spiritual renewal. I want to say as well, for spiritual renewal and even meditation, what I have done is I've journaled to my sons, my two boys, but also we have kids here over the weekend, my two boys' best friends. They're twin boys, they're 12 years old. And I have a journal for them as well. So what I'm going through in life, meditate about what I could pass on to them, or what I'm working through, and I journal to them, and that's been beneficial. I also want to just share some of the authors and books that have been very beneficial to me as well. So I'd say anything N.T. Wright has been phenomenal. I'd say Peter Scazzero's books on emotionally healthy leader, emotionally healthy spirituality. He has a lot to say about being emotionally healthy that has been very beneficial to me. A book that I recently read called With, W-I-T-H, With, by Skye Jethani. Amazing. Soul Care is a book that I think is foundational for every follower of Jesus by Dr. Rob Reimer. Please, I wish that every Christian would read this book. Anything by Alan Hirsch. Danielle Strickland also is a wonderful author and speaker. And I would just say also, I would recommend reading books that stretch you, reading books that maybe from people that aren't like in your tribe or what have you. I've even read some stuff by Jordan Peterson, which he's a guy that people in my circles are like, oh man, I don't even want to hear from him, but he even has something good to say. And I would say I would encourage my brothers and sisters to read books from women or voices from people, the communities of color, even our First Nations brothers and sisters. Let's read them as well. Let them have a voice at our theological table, as it were. And also, I think I want to just finish by just encouraging you to read and learn the Word of God in community. I think here in the West, we decide to do it individualistically and not in community. I would just implore you to do it in community, because I believe that is the way that it was always intended to be learned and heard in community with other voices and especially other people that will constantly challenge you, and they're a couple steps ahead of you as well. They could, you could disciple and sharpen each other, and it's a journey we should always carry together. So my time is up. I'm very thankful for this opportunity. I appreciate you guys, and Lord bless you. So, สวัสดีครับ ขอพระเจ้าอวยพรนะครับ